Okay, so we are with Adam and John Lawrence. Adam, you were the creator of the GovJam.
That's more complicated than that. The GovJam was initiated by three partners. One is the Australian federal government, and one is Proto Partners, a Sydney agency, and the other one is my company. They started the GovJam, and the Global GovJam we took over. So.
Okay, so you were one of the creators.
Yep.
So the first question is quite obvious. What's the GovJam? Can you explain in a few words for people of the public administration that have never heard of it?
Sure. The GovJam is a global event which takes place over about 2 days, where people all over the world meet physically. It's not an online event. People are in rooms together. And each of those rooms, they get a challenge, and they spend 48 hours trying to create service prototypes around that challenge. So they're all working on the same theme worldwide. They're in contact with each other. And basically it's a way to learn. It's a way to find out new ways to approach problems, new ways to approach citizen centricity, and new ways to approach creativity while having a fun few days and maybe getting some good ideas out of it.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So you mentioned you just have around 2 days to do all these things. How do you manage to create all these concepts, to test them, to learn about this experience in such a short period of time?
Often the short time makes it easier because it means you don't have time to fall in love with your ideas. You don't have time to make things pretty. It's very clear in the early part of the jam you're working super fast in a super lo-fi kind of way. So it's easy to make lots of ideas and throw them away if you know I only have an hour. So if you only have an hour, that actually makes it easier to work fast. It's a painful experience to throw things away. But one of the great rules of creativity and of innovation is you have to let go of ideas. So in many ways, having that super crazy, impossible deadline makes it easier.
Last year, you started this Global GovJam, and it was held in over 30 cities around the world.
About 30.
About 30, okay. And so there were hundreds of these ideas, these lo-fi ideas created.
Yeah.
Is there any pattern shared among these ideas, or some values that you found in most of these concepts created?
These ideas are set up by different people. There's usually a mixed group at a GovJam, so there are Gov people, public employees, whatever type and whatever background they have. There's usually citizens there as well, which is a fantastic opportunity to mix these people together. And there's usually some innovation or design people who have some tools and some insights which can help that process. So this mixed group of people set up the kind of ideas which are very typical, if you like, at the moment. So they have the same things in common which concern all governments, which concern all citizens, which concern all innovative people. They're looking at transparency. They're looking at human centricity. They're looking at ways to work faster with less resources, because that's something we all face, especially in government. And what they're also doing is looking at what's happening in the world, which one can take advantage of. So new technologies, new platforms, the ways people get information these days are different from they were a few years ago. So all these things you find in any innovation process, that you find in any government meeting, any government panel discussion, they come up with the GovJams. And there they turn from words into prototypes. That's the important thing. So people start building things around these ideas. Now many of these prototypes fail. That's great. We learn something. Next one. Let's keep moving. Let's keep rolling on.
From the concepts that emerged last year, do you know if some of them in some place of the world are being implemented now, or?
Yes, they are, but I prefer to talk about the other more important outcomes of the jam.
Okay.
What happens at a jam is you have some ideas come out of it. They're the first, most obvious output, and indeed some of those are being implemented now. But what's more important is what happens after the jam, because people come out of the jam and they've got new tools, new attitudes, and very strong new contacts. So what you find is with a normal conference or a business meeting, you exchange some cards, sure, but you never call that guy. After a jam, people really do call each other. And we've had examples where the group of people who in a jam created maybe 10 projects, and maybe 1 or 2 became real, which is a good result. We don't aim for that many. Those same people, in the weeks and months after the jam, generated more than a dozen new projects. So it's not what happens at the jam itself that's interesting. The jams don't necessarily make innovations, they make innovators.
Okay.
And those people, in the weeks and months after that, they have new tools, new attitudes and new contacts, and that's where the rock and roll happens.
Okay, so it's a kind of meeting point for
I think
innovators?
So. I think it attracts a certain type of people. It attracts people who want to change things, or people who are uncomfortable with the way things are, or people who have set goals, of course, to change, to innovate, or to assess what's happening and decide what to keep and what to change.
Okay.
But also it gives these people the tools and the new contexts, and often just a feeling, hey, I can do this. This is not so hard. Just because I don't have innovation department on my business card, it does not mean that I cannot innovate. It means I can bring my insights, or if I'm a citizen, it can be very motivating to work with Gov people and see, hey, these guys are really, really trying to help me. Because that's unfortunately not often the experience you get if you're a citizen. And one of the side effects of the jam that we find is that the Gov people find it very motivating to work alongside citizens and cool people like designers who say, good job, it's really cool that you're here. We start to understand your problems. We start to understand the huge difficulties of any kind of public service. We get appreciation for that, and lots of appreciation for you for being here, for trying to do new things.
We have the privilege of having you here in Barcelona, in the Public Administration School of Catalonia, because you decided to install the Global GovJam headquarters here.
That's right.
So why did you choose Barcelona?
Well, one reason because we were invited, but one reason we were invited is because there's a cool event happening around the GovJam here. There are all kinds of cool people here, and it's very interesting to see the GovJam in that context. I won't try and pronounce the Spanish name of the event, that would be too bad.
I will help you.
Yes.
In català, in fact, la setmana d'innovació en els serveis públics centrats en la ciutadania.
Exactly that.
Which would be in English like the Public Services Innovation Week,
okay,
but centered around citizens.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay. So one reason that we're here is there's a Public Service Innovation Week happening at the moment with a citizen centricity around that. And that's really, really great to have the jam in that context. Jams are very, very interesting for people who have the brief in government to involve people in innovation, in change. And of course there are old traditional tools for that, like suggestion boxes or fora or study groups or all these kind of stuff. And they're great tools. But it's not the same as really sitting down in the same room with somebody and trying to build it together. Not just describe it, not just say what it should be, but actually try and build it. Because that's when you really discover what works and what doesn't work. And it's what you discover if you're talking about the same thing or not. And as long as we stay in the verbal stage, in the verbal channel, then we can be talking about different things and nodding to each other for days.
Exactly, yeah.
When you and I start to build it, that's when we discover, that's not what I meant, but I like this part of the idea. And that's when it starts to grow. So having the jam in the context of that, and in a place like Barcelona, which is a fantastic, vibrant city, in a great location like this, where people are working very hard to improve government services, it's a perfect situation.
You are the co-founder of a service innovation consultancy called Work, Play, Experience. Work and play together in the same sentence. Isn't that a contradiction?
I don't think so at all. My background is psychology. And when someone is playful, they are measurably more productive, they are measurably more focused, and they're measurably more resilient. We don't get hurt when we're playing things, emotionally. It's much easier to take a setback in a game than in real life. So let's think about that. Productive, creative, resilient. These are ideal characteristics for someone who's working. So I don't think the opposite of play is work. I think the opposite of play is depression. People who are depressed, they don't have any of those things. They're unproductive, they have no ideas, and they get hurt by everything. So the opposite of work, we don't care about that. We're interested in what play gives us. And we think that if you can be playful and work at the same time, set free those measurable benefits of play, and then focus them on important things, that's a really powerful combination. So I don't think work and play are a contradiction. I think where they overlap, it's very, very interesting.
What kind of tools or attitudes do you use?
People have mindsets. When people see a certain context or a certain set of cues, like for example suits and boardrooms and ties and memos and stuff like this, that brings up a certain set of behaviours and responses in people. We call it mindsets in psychology. And other contexts, other tools, other visual prompts, other physical prompts, bring up other mindsets. So when we are doing something like the jam, you will see crazy things around, like rubber chickens. You will see people,
you'll see, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'll see people in suits with one of those in the pocket, or people wearing crazy wigs, whatever they want to do. Yeah? It does not mean they're not working incredibly hard. People after a jam say, I did 3 weeks' work in 2 days. They say, I did a month's work in 2 days. This is a common statement.
I have to confess that I did the GovJam last year.
Yeah, okay.
And it was an extraordinary experience, but I was exhausted.
You're absolutely exhausted. But because of those cues, it makes it easier to switch into that playful mindset where you don't take yourself so seriously. And if you don't take yourself so seriously, I think you're more inclined to take other people more seriously. So you get serious about the problems, serious about the citizens, serious about the needs, and not serious about yourself. That makes you more flexible and more creative.
And do managers understand this philosophy, let's say?
It's challenging at first to understand this, which is one reason that I usually wear a suit when I work, although I have a chicken in my pocket. You have to pick up people where they are. And managers have real goals, they have real KPIs, they have real money. They're not playing around. But we think that some of the alternative approaches that might be more playful, or that might be more high speed or high energy or more impossible sometimes, they can add to those great tools they already have. So we're not suggesting a total change in the way people work. What we're suggesting is there are other ways, there are new tools for your toolkit, and some of these have amazing results. People have been stuck in more traditional processes. They've been working on projects for a long, long time, and they try some of these more human-centered methods, these more playful, if you like, methods, more practical, more physical methods, with prototyping or whatever it is, and they go, oh, there it is. Now, sometimes just that change is valuable. And some of us who are very playful all the time, we need to look at the other methods too. We need to look at the spreadsheets. We need to look at the regulations. We need to be honest about that. But the mix is what's amazing.
Okay. And so you have a psychological background, you said, but you are also a comedian, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that some of these methods you're talking about, these playful methods, have very theatrical.
Yes, certainly. I mean, my background is psychology. Then I moved through marketing and inventing motorcycles, and then I switched to theatre. And after a while, I figured out these are all the same thing. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean that very, very strictly. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a process or a thing which makes people feel a certain way, whether that's a stage show, whether it's a motorcycle, whether it's a government service. Something that people value because it meets their needs. And if we can be human-centered about that, then I think we're closer to meeting those needs. And that's why theatrical tools, which I use in my work, which are by definition human-centered, are very, very valuable. What is it which combines, which links everything we have in the world, whether it's politics or business or playfulness or family? It's all about people.
Exactly.
It's all about people. And it doesn't matter who you talk to, any great thinker, any great leader, any great guru, any great expert, at some point they say, well, the people have to be in there or it's not going to work. Theatrical tools that we use help us put people in the middle. And that means the things that we make have a better chance to have value to somebody.
The aim of the GovJam is to innovate the public sector. So what difference do you see? Because you work with public clients and with private clients. What difference do you see between them in the way that they experience innovation?
Yeah. I wouldn't say our aim is to innovate the public sector. I wouldn't say our aim is to innovate the sector. That would be quite arrogant, I think. The public sector is full of amazing, innovative people working very, very hard. What we're trying to do is give them some tools and to bring contacts with citizens and with people in industry or in design or in creativity, which might not always be there. So we're trying to help the public sector to have more options. That's what we're trying to do. The difference, I think, between the public sector and the private sector is very simply size. It is very much easier to be fast and responsive and to pivot or to do all these things we're supposed to do, to change our ideas fast, to jump around like a flea if you're a startup or a small company with 20 or 30 people. Yeah? Okay. So a government that has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees and responsibility for millions of citizens, it's much more difficult to react fast, and that's totally understandable. We find similar contexts in very big organizations. There's also the monopoly. Governments are usually monopoly in service delivery, and this means you don't have market forces which will simply favour the other guy if you're not very good. Yeah? If I've got two telephone companies these days, if I don't like my phone company, I change. But if I don't like my unemployment office, what do? I only have the one there. And this means that there's less priority placed on some of the important things like customer centricity or citizen centricity and perhaps new ways of doing things than there is in the private sector, where you have to make these responses or you're gone.
What are the main issues that you would think that government and administration have to change in order to allow the innovation flow?
Well, it's not really my task to answer that. I think governments.
Sorry, it was a very difficult
question. I think governments themselves know this, and I think especially because every government worker is also a citizen. So this is you only have to step into your other pair of shoes, and you know where you are. But I think governments are facing all the kinds of challenges that any big organisations face. There are challenges around transparency. There are challenges around inclusivity of who's involved in this. And who is involved in change. And there's all the challenges that go with having any large organisation, that there's momentum, there things get set and don't change because we've always done it this way. These are challenges which everybody has. It doesn't matter if you're a top industrial blue chip company or if you're the government of a state. Okay.
And in these large organisations, sometimes there's the debate where the innovation should be top-down, starting from managers and spreading all over, or bottom-up, starting from workers that have their ideas and their ideas get the way up. What's your opinion in this area?
It very clearly has to be both. It is possible to lead from top down. I think if people are very inspiring, if they're very inspirational leaders, then this can work. We've seen it work. Yeah? But usually ideas from top down means that for the people who are actually making these ideas real, it's somebody else's idea. It's the next big idea. Yeah, let me do my job. Yeah? On the other hand, if you have bottom-up ideas, that can work too. Guerrilla tactics in organisations can work. Small successes can grow. They can gain attention. They can be adopted sort of on the black market by other organisations, other departments in the organisation. That can work too. But then if the big bosses say no, or more usually if they simply measure something else, because people do what's measured, then these things don't happen. So I think it's very, very exciting is when there's clear top-down support for bottom-up activity. So people are invited to be included in the process. They're welcome. They're given the tools to do that. And this is what the jam is all about. Then the innovations come on welcoming ears. Yeah? So they know there is space for this. They know they're going to be listened to. And they know that even if the ideas are challenging, they won't be thrown away immediately. So that needs some courage at the top. And it needs some tools at the bottom. Okay.
So we are getting to the end. Imagine the people that will be watching this interview, probably public workers, saying, yes, this is very good, but I don't know how to change, really, my attitude and the things I do in work. What would you say to these people?
I would say have a GovJam. That's the first way. But I think the important thing for us to realise when we're organising events like this is that people in government have a very short amount of time to work. They work extremely hard. They have to do more and more every year with less and less budget and time. Yeah? So it's difficult for these people to take a couple of days to do something like a GovJam. We think it's worth it, and the people who have done it tell us that they think it was worth it as well. But it's very hard to make that first step. There are all kinds of people out there who are running great events where you can go in your limited spare time, we understand that, and pick up some tricks or some tips which will help you save time next week, which will help you be the real you next week and not just be shut into your job function. So it might be a startup weekend, it might be one of our other jams, it might be an innovation camp, a social innovation camp. All these wonderful events are out there. It might be a digital Monday meeting, or there are these fantastic organisations all around the world. So give it a try. You'll find that you have much more in common with these entrepreneur startup people who tend to hang around these events than you think. So go along and pick up some of these tools and come back, and next week will be a different week. Good.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adam, on behalf of the Public Administration School of Catalonia, for inspiring us and awakening the real youth that are inside us.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.